Let's talk a little bit about the running backs, though, because you lose Jahmyr Gibbs, dynamic pass catcher. We've talked about how maybe the run game lacked a little bit of physicality with that style of running back. And, we're talking about maybe trying to see Alabama get back to that. They've recruited offensive linemen who were a lot more physically imposing. It can move guys in the run game. We expect that to be a kind of a theme of the offense moving forward. But with Jace McClellan, he's a good, zone runner, man blocking. Doesn't really matter what the guys are, doing in front of him. He can be effective in that rushing style. Certainly expect him to kind of be the headliner. But from there, where do you see the running back by committee kind of, going?
Yeah, I sort of look at the running back situation similar to quarterback. It's easier to learn the offense, I think, from the running back position. I think Justice Haynes and Richard Young are really talented guys that could play this fall and even play a significant role. I certainly don't rule that out, but they have a lot to learn. And what Alabama can enjoy is while Justice Haynes and Richard Young are learning all that they need to learn, the running back position's in good hands with Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, and Jamarion Miller. I think Miller, to me, Clint, really symbolizes what I foresee for the Alabama offense as a whole, which is this return to a little bit more of the run game, and in particular between the tackles and being physical behind a huge offensive line. And to me, Jamarion Miller sort of personifies that, just like Jahmyr Gibbs may have personified, hey, let's throw the ball all over the place. We're even going to throw it to the back. We're throwing it so much, we're going to throw it to the back. I think Gibbs sort of was that guy. But now as the offense is evolving in a different direction, Miller is sort of, to me, the poster child for it. Now, I think Jace McClellan will end up being the back that plays the most snaps, that maybe has the most carries, that maybe has the most touches, because you're going to throw it to Jace too. But I think Jace and Jamarion Miller will share the running back position and share the load as Alabama's offense sort of evolves into more of a ground-based, run-based offense, or builds a pass game off the run game. And I see Roydell Williams as sort of a utility back. And by that, I mean, Roydell's really good on third downs, not because he's such a great pass catcher. He's pretty good at that, but he's so good at picking up the blitz. I mean, he stones guys on those blitzes. I think he's the most advanced back Alabama has in that department. So you can use Roydell on some third downs. You can use Roydell around the goal line. So I think there's a role for Roydell, but I think the primary backs will be Jace and Jamarion Miller. And then you have Justice Haynes and Richard Young in the garage. They'll be ready to go if needed, but they can take this fall to spend a lot of it learning about playing running back at this level.
Well, it's funny because the what we're talking about here, Alabama has this conversation that needs to be had at a lot of different positions. And what I mean by that is you've got like the Caleb Downs, ultra talented freshman at safety, but you've also got Christian Story, who's kind of been processed, shown some ability when given opportunities. Now he's looking to kind of step up into a role. So which way do you go? Which one ends up starting? Like, you want to give credit to the older guy, the veteran guy. He's experienced, but there's like this hunch that makes you think that the younger guy's going to push them and might even end up taking the starting job. We're not really concerned necessarily about Jace McClellan losing the starting job. But what we're worried about is Roydell Williams ceding, what should be number 2 touches to either Jamarion Miller or maybe a Justice Haynes or a Richard Young. And that's kind of, we saw Trey Sanders this past year, I guess. Now, granted, a lot of his climb up the depth chart in 2021 was the result of, injuries. But when he was called upon, he performed extremely well. The coaching staff loved him, loved his personality. He was once a 5-star top running back in the country. Very talented guy in his own right, but yet once everybody was healthy and stuff, and I think a lot of that is injury related and just the wreck and his recovery from that and just never really being the same. But at the same time, you saw him, Jamarion Miller was getting a lot more work than him in mop-up duty. And you saw the combination of Jahmyr Gibbs, Jace McClellan, and Roydell Williams is kind of the 3-headed monster, even though I would say it was more so of a 2-headed monster, with Roydell coming in as needed. And then when other guys were banged up, you saw him kind of become the number 2. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting backfield because it's loaded with talent. Now, granted, there's not a Derrick Henry style of running back. There's not a Bo Scarborough. There's not a Najee Harris, these 6'2", 6'3", 230, 240, 250-pound running backs like Alabama's had at certain points in the past. It's more of a, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson type of backfield where they're like, you've got some power. Now, granted, I don't think anybody on the roster right now has Trent Richardson's power. I think that was definitely a strong suit, different breed. But it's a good backfield loaded with talent. It's a matter of what does the carrier or the touch distribution look like. And I'll be very curious to see how that plays out as, the spring. If I had to guess, wouldn't you say probably McClellan and Roydell will be the ones leading the charge in the spring? And then it'll be a matter of, throughout summer and fall camp, you might start seeing some of these younger guys start to take over a little bit.
Yeah, I sort of see it that way. I sort of see, obviously, day one. Okay, spring practice one, day one. Jace is 1, Roydell is 2, Jamarion's 3, and then let's say Justice 4 and Richard 5. I think that's clearly the case. I just predict as the spring goes on and as fall camp goes on, Jamarion sort of hops Roydell to become more of a 1B to Jace's 1A. Again, that's a prediction. But day one, practice one, no question. It's Jace first and Roydell second. Roydell's a good player. I'm not trying to demote him. I'm not saying he's not good enough. I just think Miller is not only super special, Miller fits what I think Coach Saban would like to see with the offense. And I think that's why ultimately Jamarion becomes a big part of things. I think Justice and Richard might be more garbage time backs, except for this, Clint. The running back position, it's so easy to get people hurt, banged up, and they have to miss time. So I'm not saying that Justice Haynes and Richard Young won't be ready. I think through injuries, they're very likely going to have to play a big role with this team in the fall. But assuming everyone stays pristinely healthy, which we know will never be the case, but assuming everyone does, I see ultimately Jace 1A, Jamarion 1B, Roydell as your utility back, and then Justice and Richard play at the end of decided games.
Yeah, and what I love about the potential injury factor is the fact that you have Emmanuel Henderson. Like, you've already got a guy, in my opinion, who, if you needed to, if you started suffering, injuries at that position like you did a couple of years ago, it's not a matter of moving an off-ball linebacker like DeMoy Kennedy or, a receiver who's never really, done a whole, maybe played a little bit in the backfield in high school, but it's not really known as a running back. You've got a guy who's actually seen significant carries in high school, played the position, understands, how to take a handoff properly from the quarterback and what to look for in pass protection and just a lot of those different things. And so I think that that's very important from a depth standpoint. I would say that Alabama, if they needed to, could more so run 6 deep rather than 5 deep. But Emmanuel Henderson's going to work at receiver, barring some sort of, run of injuries like we've seen in the past. But at least you've had that guy who you kind of would know who would become the emergency running back if you needed him to. Hey, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to the Bama Insider YouTube channel to keep up with all things Alabama football, and hit the bell so you get notified every time we go live and post new content.